more. We're joined now by the military analyst, Sean Bell. Thank you so much for your time, Sean. This is, in essence, it's a story of two halves, isn't it? We've got concern about the bombardment and civilian lives that could be lost. At the same time, 2 further hostages have been released. What more do we know?
Yeah, good morning, Jeremy. Welcome back. Good morning, Rosie. The trouble is, the big picture here is that 1 million Palestinian refugees have gradually made their way from north to south as the Israeli Defence Forces have moved their way down through from the north, clearing the sort of middle of Gaza, Khan Yunis, and now focused in the south. So now you've got this massively high population density in Rafah, and the Israelis are now preparing, or it sounds like they've started, their campaign there to try and wheedle out the last 4 battalions, they claim, of Hamas fighters. Now, if you look at some of the pictures down there, these Palestinians, they're now in a tent city, which is about 2 square miles wide. Population density, how on earth any military personnel from the IDF are going to be able to wheedle out where Hamas are, where civilians are, where the hostages are? And when you have bombing campaigns like that, you end up creating all sorts of carnage. And whilst it's great news that 2 hostages were released, I think most pundits believe there's about 84 that were left probably alive in Gaza. It's very difficult to see how this next phase of the campaign is going to be good news for those remaining hostages. And frankly, if you look at the region, where do these Palestinian refugees go? Either you put them in a tent city, the United Nations has said they wouldn't be party to that. Either you put them across to Egypt. Egypt will never accept them across there. They flow into Israel to the east. That's not going to be possible. Or they move further north into the devastation that's been left and further away from the humanitarian aid. So there's a real conundrum at the moment.
Sean, delighted to have you on. Just in the 2 weeks watching this from afar, there has been a seismic shift, not only in the public's feeling, I think, towards Netanyahu and the continued aggression, but also perhaps across the world. And in the past, we were talking about this with Tobias in the last hour, you know, if America had said to Israel privately, let alone publicly, listen, you need to pull back and start talking. But Netanyahu seems to be absolutely hell-bent on doing what he said he's doing. And I, you know, personally will always stand by Israel's right initially in terms of what happened on October the 7th. I stand by that absolutely. But you as a military analyst have just made the point. You've got 1.5 million people dispersed in tents to get rid of 4 battalions. How the hell do you do that without a major and a continued loss of life? So how's that going to stand up across the world, in your opinion, as this goes on? Because he says it's on the way. A planned Israeli ground invasion in Rafah. Even Lord Cameron of Chipping Sodbury, apparently, he says a disgrace. So where do you think this ends, Sean?
Well, it wasn't just Lord Cameron, was it? I mean, you've got Biden saying this was over the top. You've got former First Lady Clinton saying that Netanyahu is not trustworthy. I mean, this is from their primary backers. I think one of the concerns, exactly as you say, is that what does good look like at the end of the day? What is the political environment that the military are trying to prepare? And what's happening at the moment, I think we've gone over 28,000 Palestinian deaths now, well over 67,000 injured, 2/3 of those understood to be children. The devastation that's been wreaked. Will this final phase in Rafah actually deliver success to Israel? Will Israel be safer as a result of what they're doing? It's very hard to see that's the case. And the worry here, I think, from most pundits, particularly military experts, is saying you set a political environment that then dictates what the military action will be. And none of us know what that political environment, we thought it was a 2-state solution, even America did before this, and it now seems very likely that's not what Netanyahu is planning. And if, although he says it's not, if it is a 1-state solution, then that is something that the West would find very difficult to support.
Yeah, for sure. Netanyahu was actually interviewed on this channel, and he said if he had to do this alone, that's what he was going to do. So we'll be, you know, tracking developments.
But it's really
here.
interesting, just very quickly, as I said last time, we haven't got much time, but actually, not just public opinion, well, global opinion, Sean, briefly. I mean, people describe him as a dead man walking politically with nothing to lose, to be perfectly honest, because after this war, he'll be out anyway. So maybe this is his mission, but I think it's going to come back and bite him somewhat.
Well, Jeremy, you might be right, and I think there's a lot of concern about where this is going. But you have to look, it might well be that Netanyahu thinks this will be his legacy, that actually, finally, after all this messing around, he will finally solve the Hamas problem. And I believe that's what he believes. The question is whether that's actually will be achieved or whether his legacy will be something a lot worse.
Sean, we want to ask you today, looking at our own armed forces, Grant Shapps is launching a review. He's, I think it's fair to say, pretty unhappy, angry even, that some of the sort of diversity, inclusivity policies that have been put in place are hindering his ability to recruit in the army. What is going on, and is he right when he says woke extremists are rife in the army?
I think, Rosie, unfortunately, you've got to get underneath the headlines of these stories. It's no doubt at all the headline is damning. There's no doubt about that at all. But I know firsthand that if the armed forces aren't recruiting from every corner of our great nation, they are worse as a result. If we are not attracting various ethnic groups or whatever that have extra special skills that can help augment our armed forces, then we've got to do something about that. And this isn't about reducing standards. It's about making the armed forces better. Because if you don't see role models in your service, whether it's black, white, race or whatever, then you don't think the armed forces are for you, whereas they should represent everybody in our service. The trouble is, I think, like most industries, they struggle to recruit across the diverse areas, and well, that's definitely something the military is trying to do. They shouldn't be breaking rules. They mustn't compromise standards doing it. But there are absolutely huge benefits if we can make our armed forces more diverse, more representative of the nation they serve. And that is what I think Grant Shapps is getting angry about, because people are trying to shortcut, trying to make the services better.
I mean, I think the point is, Sean, I take your point absolutely. It's about, you know, diversity and leaders and people with ability across all walks, cultures, creeds, whatever. The problem is many people, and I guess Grant Shapps has pointed this well, feel that it's gone the other way now, so that in order, we live in a world like this, in order to tick a box, in order to make sure you do the right thing, are you missing people who don't tick that box, who are better at the job? And so it's about balance, isn't it?
It is, Jeremy, but I think we do tend to focus on the headlines. I mean, unfortunately, I'm old enough and grey-haired enough that I was a pilot instructor in the Air Force before we had female pilots. And the decision was made we're going to have female pilots, but because there weren't any in the service, none were applying for the roles. So we had to adapt the way we recruited. Today, we have, I mean, when I was a squadron commander, we had several females on our squadron, and they were outstanding. Truly, I'm not saying that for political correctness. They were genuinely outstanding pilots. So we've got to find a way to make our service greater by including these groups.
Completely agree. Sean, seriously, my friend, lovely to have you. And the grey hair, I have grey hair, mine's dyed, yours isn't. Thank you for being on this morning.